Hello, gunfighters. Welcome to Gunfighter Life. Seasoned gunfighters, new gunfighters, aspiring gunfighters. Welcome to the tribe. Today, continuing on the best loads genre, but with a twist. Today, we're going to be talking about the 22 long rifle. Don't forget to like, subscribe, leave a review of the podcast, and check out goodshepherdtraining.com. As a reminder, we got a pretty cool shooting shirt on there and some pretty cool mugs. Plug in the bio if you want to skip it. You've heard it before or don't care. You can skip around 3 minutes, 45 seconds into where the bio starts. First and foremost, I am a servant of God, preacher, a fisher of men. God is number one in my life, and everything that I do in this podcast is no different, and I don't apologize for that. A little bit about me in the background. I grew up, I guess what you would consider a heathen. Didn't grow up a Christian, but I grew up in the southeastern United States, what most would consider very poor. Hunting and fishing and shooting. Joined the Marine Corps at 17, did a couple of combat tours in Iraq. After my combat tours in Iraq, I was an urban warfare instructor for the United States Marine Corps under Mojave Viper. I also served in law enforcement for several years in LAPD. I worked patrol assignments and more specialized assignments, where by God's grace, He got me through some nasty places in this world, war zones, and some of the nastiest streets in the country. Not because I am better, because God chose to have mercy on me and had a purpose for me, and I'm thankful for that. After my time in law enforcement, I was a private contractor for federal government, for a 3-letter government agency I won't specify, doing private contracting work. I'm very much involved in guns and gunfighting. I also served in the U.S. Army, both full-time and part-time National Guard. I should say my primary MOS is in both branches of the military or infantry, as of one sort or another. Specialized infantry in the Marine Corps and an MOS that no longer exists. I started competition shooting even before I joined the Marine Corps at 17. I won my first gold medal even before I joined the Marine Corps at 17. I've been blessed by God with the talents He's given me to win more shooting competitions than I can remember. I've won most of my competitions in rifle and pistol, but I've also competed in archery and shotgun and even muzzleloader, knife throwing, hatchet throwing. I've competed in all that. I've also been a professional big game hunter and guide. Like I said, I grew up hunting and fishing and shooting. I've done it to put meat on the table because I like to put food on the table with the talents God's given me. I don't apologize for that. I've done it as a professional hunter and guide. I've slain all manner of beast and guided for all manner of beast. Bear and wolf and elk and deer, mule deer, whitetail deer. I've slain ram and fallow deer and countless animals. And I don't apologize for that either. FBI certified, firearms instructor, NRA, and a bunch of other 3-letter government agency certifications. Blessed be the Lord my rock, who trains my hands for war and my fingers for battle. Psalm 144. I've been blessed to be the commander of a tactical team, an SRT, special response team, in a large metropolitan area, where our primary job was to stop active shooters. But again, first and foremost, I'm a servant of God, called by God to share the good news, preacher, a fisher of men. With that, we will roll into the day's topic. So let's talk about the 22 long rifle. Few things in the gun community have more lure and myth than, let's say, tall tales, as a 22 long rifle. And people have this kind of belief in the 22 long rifle that may not be founded in reality, the same way they do like in a Glock, an AK, like you can run over them with a truck in the mud and minus 500 degrees and it'll still work. or the 22 long rifle bow spectrum is not good for anything as big as a raccoon, or it will stop an elephant. I've heard both. So we'll talk about that a little bit today. But first we'll go through, since they seem to be well received, go-to or my favorite 22 loads. The number one, if I had to pick just one, would be the 36 grain CCI mini mags. They're a great load. They're great for hunting. They're great for target shooting. They're great in rifles. They tend to cycle most semi-automatic pistols. The CCI mini mags are, in my opinion, the best value, the best bang for your buck. And if I had to pick just one 22 long rifle, it would be a 36 grain. There are certainly some better loads for certain applications, for sure. I'm not denying that. But can you get them at Walmart? Can you get them regularly and commonly? So that's my go-to load. My second, like it, is the Federal 36 grain copper-plated Champions. These are a fantastic load. They come in bulk packs, generally a 525, or they probably come in different denominations. But the Federal Champions, they're great. I would put them a little bit under the mini mags, but you can generally get them quite a bit cheaper. If you're looking for a little bit more budget-friendly round that's still good for shooting and plinking and small game hunting, the CCI 36 grain Federal Champions. They're a great load. Like I said, they generally come in a brick, what we colloquially call as a brick, or what I grew up calling as a brick, but generally in a 500-ish something round range. So the Federal Champions, they're a great load. The copper-plated ones, 36 grain hollow points. They usually come, at least the ones I'm familiar with, come in a blue box of Federal, kind of like their centerfire counterparts. If you hear me shivering, it's because I am sitting outside in the snow. It is snowing pretty hard and the wind is blowing. But this is the quiet place that I have to record, so forgive the shivers. But the Federal 36 grain Champions, if I was going out as I have in the past to help farmers eradicate massive amounts of prairie dogs, which is a lot of fun, that would probably be my go-to, the bulk pack of the 36 grain Federal Champions. They're a good price for the money. Are they as high quality as a Federal, or as I was as CCI mini mags? No, but they are quite a bit cheaper. Like I said, they're a good second, in my opinion. Now, next down the line is the Cci Clean Fire. These are polymer coatings. If you're not familiar with polymer coatings, they've been becoming more popular in recent years. I've been using them for a few years. Polymer coating goes back quite a bit longer than that, but it's really become popular recently. And these 22 long rifle loads are great. They tend to be very clean, as the name implies, both in less lead exposure and in your bore. Because it has this polymer coating, it tends to leave a very clean bore for high volume of fire. This is a great load for high volume of fire, practice shooting, plinking. It's not a hollow point round, but if you're not looking for a hollow point round, this is great. They are a great round. They tend to come in bulk packs, unlike the CCI mini mags, which generally come in 100-round sleeves. I know they sometimes come out with like 300-round packs, but these generally come in a bottle or a can, and they're the Cci Clean Fires. They're great for high volume of practice. They've worked very well for me, very accurate, very reliable, especially in semi-autos. Okay, so I'm somewhere a little bit warmer. Let's move on down the list. These are going to be the Agila Super Extras. These are fantastic. They tend to be very powerful, as the name implies. So if you're looking for a round to work in a fairly finicky semi-automatic 22 handgun, you might want to start here, if not the CCI mini mags. But the Agila Super Extras are awesome rounds. They're very reliable in most semi-autos. They are not expensive, and they tend to be pretty readily available. Agila has really come on strong in the market the last couple of years. And they really make some good stuff, and their 22s are really good. Like I said, these Super Extras are fairly potent. Give you an idea, the CCI mini mags I just looked up, and what it says for their velocity is 1260 for a 36 grain hollow point. Now, midway is where I'm getting this information for the super extras they have. They're listed at their 38 grains, a little bit heavier, at 1280 feet per second. Now, do I care that much about that little bit extra velocity? Not so much for the velocity's sake. You're talking a couple extra foot-pounds. But what you gain, like I said, in that reliability in a dirty, gunky, or semi-finicky 22 handgun is increased pressure and force on the slide that may cause it to cycle when other loads may not. Oh, and I should also mention, if you don't want a hollow point, they make it in the round nose 40 grain at, I believe, 1255. What I saw was the velocity. Verify that for yourself. Now, the next one's talking about powerful hollow point 22s down on my list. They're not down because they're not great rounds. They're down on there because they're not super common to find, and they're pretty expensive for 22. But if you were looking for a medium small game hunting round, here is where I would go first. Like I said, Cci Mini Mag 36 round, my best all around, and not a bad choice for this. But if you're looking for a specialty round, 22 long rifle for hunting bigger, let's say bigger small game, things like raccoon, things like beaver, this round will be my go-to. And it's the Winchester Super X. And I believe they call it their hyper velocity. And that is pushing a 40 grain at 1435. Which is quite a big step up in velocity, and if you're talking about performance on, again, what I would call big small game, that's pretty legit. That's a pretty big bump up when you're talking from 1250 to 1435. Talking about a 40 grain bullet versus a 36 grain bullet. Now, Winchester does make other Super X rounds, and I'm sure they're great rounds, but if we're talking about this, I'm talking about the ones that come in the translucent red pack that say Super X and they say Hyper Velocity. They generally come in a 100 round sleeve, or at least that's what I've seen them in. That's what I'm referring to. And they, like I said, they're a powerhouse. I would test any 22. I was carrying for defense, but if its primary goal was for defense, I would really look at this load. It is quite beefy for a 22 long rifle. And again, would be my go-to for things like beaver, or if I was going to hunt coyote with a 22, or raccoon, or things like that. Badgers. This would be the go-to load for that, for me. And then next down the line, I would list a bunch of things together. Anything that's a solid lead projectile, for me, I don't really care for. So they'd be down on the list. Even if they are accurate, I tend to be a high volume shooter. And this may not apply to you, but I've shot lead 22 long rifle so much that it has clogged up to the barrel to the point the bullets were coming out in pieces, like a clogged sewer pipe. And I've never done that with something like the Cci Clean Fire or Cci Mini Mag, where it's a copper coated bullet or a copper and wax coated bullet. I haven't had that happen, but with lead bullets, like I said, I've shot so much that I have literally had bullets coming out like a shotgun in little chunks and been unable to push a cleaning rod through the barrel. So if you're a high volume shooter, and I am, I don't like any just straight lead rounds. I have a bunch of them because they're cheap. I have them set aside for like, I can't get ammo and this is what I have. At that point, it is what it is. But for my go-to rounds, any just solid lead round is not that. If you're a super precision 22 target shooter, I'm talking about like Olympic, rimfire, that kind of stuff. Most of those rounds are just straight lead. They're just easy to make uniform. I get that. That's not me. If that's you, then that's you. But if you want my favorite loads, none of the just straight lead loads, the Federal, auto match, anything like that that's just solid lead, I don't care for them. And then not solid lead, but way down on the list are the Remington Golden Bullets. If you want like my last pick, like if I had a bunch of stuff on the shelves to pick from, the last thing that I would pick would be Remington Golden Bullets. And in my experience, and I haven't tried these recently since Remington went out of business and got bought out and went bankrupt, but in years past, Remington Golden Bullets, in my opinion, are kind of the worst in quality control, the worst in consistency. I just don't care for them. Like I said, if that's all I had to shoot, I would shoot it. But if I had any other choice, it'd probably be another choice. So that's kind of my go-to loads for the 22 long rifle. Now let's talk about some myth. And verify this for yourself if I remember it correctly, and I may be remembering it incorrectly. I believe it was Peter Hathaway Capstick, and I really like the book, Death in the Long Grass. But I believe he tells a story about some poachers that kill an elephant with a 22 long rifle. People use that to think that the 22 long rifle is a do-it-all, can do anything round. And just because it is possible, just because that story might be true, doesn't mean it's probable or likely. I could probably go on a golf course with an aluminum baseball bat and a golf ball and hit a hole-in-one. It's possible. I could do it. I probably couldn't do it most of the time. It'd be a fluke if it happened, kind of like killing an elephant with a 22 long rifle. I've also heard people that I trust tell stories about how they've shot raccoons in the face and they just sneezed and went on about their business. And again, that may happen. But I think with most well-placed shots with a 22 long rifle, you can anchor a raccoon. May it hit weird on the skull and skid around and not break the skull and the raccoon gets away? That's possible, but again, not likely. So don't base your opinion on the 22 long rifle on one of those one-off stories. Look at it in real-world numbers and real-world shootings and real-world effectiveness in most cases. There was an account recently, or semi-recently, a few years ago, of a police officer that emptied all his Glock 21, which I believe is 12 or 13 rounds in each magazine, 3 magazines of 45 ACP hollow points into a suspect. And he didn't stop until the last 1 or 2 rounds when he made a headshot. Assuming that story is true, you can look it up and verify it. But assuming that story is true, that doesn't mean that the 45 ACP is not effective. There's always this gray area in happenstance in ballistics. Some people will tout the 22 long rifle as the ultimate go-to survival weapon. And a lot of people would say that, and I see why they say that. I am not one of them. My go-to would be a shotgun. I've talked about that before. We won't get into that, but the fact that a lot of people do espouse a 22 long rifle means that it does have some merit. The ammo is super light. Little 100-round sleeves, which I like because they keep the ammo safe and secure and unbent and fairly stable and clean. Like if I have cargo pants, I could put, 3 in each cargo pocket and have 600 rounds plus what's in the gun and go off running into the woods and probably have enough ammo to feed myself for a decade if I'm smart and implement trapping and all kinds of other things. That being said, it's not my go-to. I love to hunt with 22. I went hunting today, by God's grace, successfully with my Rhodesian Ridgeback pup who just turned 5 months old, Alexander Hamilton. It's great. I did that because I wanted him to get used to shooting. 22 long rifle is not super loud in a long rifle, which is another benefit. Gun's light and super handy. I also want him to learn how to hike and have proper etiquette on the trail and not get in my way and track down the animals when shot and find them and at first let him eat them so he really enjoys hunting. Look at 22 long rifle. Great, that's one of my go-tos. It would be my second go-to for only have to grab one gun and head into the wilderness. But the 22 is great, but just base it on reality. It has some inherent advantages that are real, like super lightweight. The bullets tend to do nasty things far more than their size would imply. They, as I understand it, are quite common in clandestine ops and assassinations and things like that. That would have went away a long time ago if they weren't effective. They also have some real inherent disadvantages in that they're rimfires, and rimfires tend to be not nearly as reliable as centerfires. There are ways around that by getting high-end premium ammo that costs quite a bit of money. But even then, I don't think they're to the point where they're as reliable as good, high-quality centerfire, let's say defensive centerfire rounds. There are some real advantages and disadvantages. It wouldn't be my go-to, defensive gun, but I certainly would take it. If you told me that I had to conceal carry and that's all I could have was a 22, I'd be fine. So I guess what I would say is base your opinion on the 22 long rifle, root it in reality, in real stuff, not one-off things. If you pick it for your one head into the woods rifle or something, that's up to you. I don't fault you for that. A lot of people do, and I see why they do. whether it's your go-to or not, I would encourage every, shooter, hunter, gun enthusiast, alpha male to have a 22 as part of their battery. You can store and carry a lot of ammo. It's easy to train with. It's fun to train with. It's good to teach new shooters on. And if you're an alpha male, that's part of being an alpha male, is sharing your blessings with others and teaching others. It's good for that. It's good for a lot of things. It's good for small game. That it's good for storing and shooting quite a bit of ammo. It has its purpose, even if it's not your go-to. Even if you're looking at getting into guns, even if it's not your first gun, and it's a lot of people's first gun, it probably ought to be your third or fourth pick at least. If you have, 3 black rifles and, 3 Glock 19s, looking at getting the next Glock 19 with a fancier slide and upgraded sights and a red dot, maybe step back and think about getting a 22 long rifle, handgun or rifle. I think you'd get more out of it, in my opinion. And if I didn't mention your favorite load today, please leave it in the comments, write a review of the podcast, and say, hey, my favorite is the super awesome whiz bang 40 grain 5022 load, and here's why. If you leave it in a review, then not only I will see it, but everybody else that clicks on the review will be able to see it too. On the reviews, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a review of the podcast. If you want to check out more, if you like this podcast, you may also like the Alpha Male podcast. If you care about the important stuff, check out Simple Man Sermons, the preachings of a simple man called by God to share the good news of Jesus Christ. You should be able to find those on any platform that you found this podcast on. If you want to check out more pictures, things like that, go to goodshepherdtraining.com, goodshepherdtraining.com. We have merch on there. We have some pretty cool metal coffee cups. We're talking about survival, going out in the woods, killing stuff, cooking it. Some cool shirts on there. Just a way to fly the banner if you want to, show that you're part of the tribe. And if you want to support, because these podcasts are free to listen to, but sadly they're not free to put out, you, again, go to goodshepherdtraining.com. There's a Patreon link on there. Just click it. For the fraction of the cost of even a small box of 22 ammo, you can help support the podcast. Normally at the end of the podcast, we do a tactical tips. What I'd like to do is share. We recently did 5 guns for the end of the world as we know it. And one of the patrons got a hold of me on Patreon, which is one of the perks, gave me his list. So I'd like to share that with you. So first initial P, last name Baker. I talked to him. He said it was good for sharing his picks, or what he'd pick for 5 guns for the end of the world as we know it. His number 1, a Mossberg 500 with both barrels. I assume that's a short defense barrel and a hunting barrel. Great pick. Number 2, the Marlin Model 60 with an M1 carbine sights. I love those sights. That's actually what I was hunting with today. If you don't know about those, look up the M1 carbine sights. I have them on my Ruger 1022. I honestly didn't know they made them for the Marlin Model 60. That's pretty awesome. If you're not familiar with the Marlin Model 60, it's kind of the rival of the 1022. And for just hunting and wilderness, it may be better. I say that because out hiking and running today through the wilderness with the pup, actually twice disconnected the magazine from my 1022. And the Marlin Model 60 has a tube feed magazine, which is not great if you're trying to be super cool, tactical speed reload. If you're actually out hunting, throwing the thing over your back and going up and down some steep terrain, it's kind of an advantage, or at least can be an advantage, because you're not going to lose the magazine. His third pick, and this is an interesting one that wasn't on my radar, but a great pick. His number 3 is the Ruger LCRX 3-inch 8-shot 22 long rifle, and that's fantastic because with a revolver and 22 long rifle, like we talked about, they're not as reliable as center fires. Well, the remedial action on a revolver is that you just pull the trigger again. So if you get a dead fire where you hit it and the round doesn't go off, that priming compound doesn't go all the way around the rim, or for whatever reason, a light strike, you just pull the trigger again, which kind of mitigates some of that problem with the 22 long rifle. A great pick. I will point out another good thing about inner revolvers. You could shoot shorts, longs, or long rifles, which may have an advantage depending on what you can and can't get ammo-wise. His next pick is a Sega. He says NY compliant AK with 2.5 power scope, or 2.5 scope. I assume that means 2.5 power. I have really no comment on those. I've never run a Sega. I may have fired one. Honestly, don't remember. I remember when they became big. I may have shot one back then. It's just not my cup of tea, but certainly a great semi-automatic shotgun. Or perhaps he's talking about the Sega, just regular AK 7.62 by 39. He doesn't specify. But any good quality AK would be a great choice for top 5 guns for the end of the world. So if he's talking about 7.62 by 39 or even 5.56, any of those would be a solid choice. When I hear Sega, I think of shotgun because that's kind of what made that AK shotgun platform popular. But he could be just talking about a 7.62 39 AK. His number 5 pick is a Glock Model 45 with F8 sights. I know, like I said, Glocks aren't my favorite, but I do have one sitting right next to me, loaded next to the bed. I would not argue that they're a great choice, especially for like an end of the world pick 5. Depending on whatever scenario you're envisioning, they are known for being reliable. They are kind of known for being the AK of the handgun world. So certainly a great pick for that, and I appreciate him for sharing and saying that it was okay to share with the audience. So a shout out to him and all the other patrons that help make this podcast and have helped, by God's grace, push it to what it is today. With that, thanks and have a blessed day.